Hello everybody. Welcome to the stream where it is now actually beginning to feel like we are getting into the next season, because where until now we'd been sort of... Hold on, I need to fix this for now and then I'll move it again later, but you'll see why. Whilst we've been recently looking at various pre-season bits and various transfer bits, you know that you are properly getting into a new season of football when the manager has their first press conference of the year, because that means business. That means we are incredibly close to the first bit of football that we are going to get competitively in the short term, which is in just about 48 hours' time away at Nottingham Forest. And Daniel Farkas had to say not only on the Nottingham Forest match sort of loosely, it was a very, very wide discussion that only really briefly covered Forest, but that makes a little bit of sense because we've not really seen what Forest under Glasner necessarily looks like. But it also covered a significant amount of contract chat, it covered a decent amount of transfer chat, it covered a little bit of everything. So I'm going to cover all of that in the stream right now, and I'm going to answer any questions and all that kind of thing. But before I do, pop a like on the stream. That'd be nice. Thank you very much. Anyway, very first question was a very, very simple one. Was one that you look at and you go, okay, I see why you started with that one, but it's a little bit of a boring one. It was just, how are you feeling? To which Farkas' response was that he's good, he's concentrating, he's happy with pre-season, looking forward to it. And then we get into the first sort of meatier question, which is about the aspirations for the year. And aspiration and goals and the sort of general direction of the club was a very, very big part of the conversation in this press conference, for a very, very good reason too. Because obviously everyone's expectations are very high. At one point, Farker himself cited the article that came out from The Athletic that was that Leeds United are currently the most optimistic fan base of all of the fan bases in the Premier League, with 99% of our fans feeling positive about the season ahead, which obviously isn't the case for a lot of clubs, and is a very, very positive story for Daniel Farke, but it's also negative in its own ways. And he said that his aspirations for the year were that it's important to start as well as we can, keep in mind where we're coming from and what the past has told us. Then went into a little bit of a chat around sort of second season syndrome, as a lot of people like to discuss it, saying that a solid second season is very, very difficult, and in the past you get things like expectations being a little bit higher, which makes things kind of tough. You get some players not feeling like they got a point to prove. So, as mentioned as well, Outenacker's last season was his first season in any top division in Europe. Does he feel like he has a point to prove now? We'll find out, but if he potentially doesn't feel like he's got a point to prove, then that could lead to the levels going a little bit lower, which is not the best of things. Ideally, that's not going to be the case. He said, first and foremost, the target is, like last season, earn 40 points and stay in the best league in the world. And if there's more to achieve, then we'll do it step by step. But he emphasised, and he said this many, many times throughout the press conference, and I'm going to say it now because I think it's something that we all could do with a little bit of paying attention to, but he emphasised the fact that we need to stay a bit humble. Yes, we did really well last season. We came 14th and it looked very, very good. You can't coast, because if you coast in the Premier League like we did last time out, you end up in deep, deep trouble. And once the trouble kicks in for one season, you end up in a relegation battle like we did last time. The next season, a lot of players aren't going to want to come, and you end up in that sort of death spiral and potentially relegated, which is absolutely not what we want to see. So the aspirations that he set out in the first sort of answer was continuity. Stick around, stay consistent, and that would be very, very nice. But then he went on to, in a later answer, sort of discuss how important the little adjustments to the squad and to what you're doing with the tactics and the side are also absolutely key to us going forward. So he was asked specifically how important are small adjustments to progress and establish in the Premier League, how difficult is it? And this is where he went even further into the sort of expectations chat, into the not putting too much pressure on ourselves chat, by saying that it's very, very difficult to manage doing that because very few clubs do. It's ambitious, we want to build something unique, which is very, very difficult to manage, which is fair enough. We already know how big the club is, how big we can be in the long term, wants to be in the top half, wants to be talking about Europe, but he wants us to back it up with the actions rather than just words, which is what is the difficult part. The part where you have to properly throw yourself into it and make sure that we're actually performing to the level that we're aiming to perform at, because if we don't, we stumble, and if we stumble, we fall, because that's how brutal the Premier League can be. He ran through a few other sort of specific numbers and bits of information as well, which were not the most positive, but I think it was a little bit of a point that a lot of fans need to hear right now, because a lot of fans are having very, very loud, very positive conversations, and that is a good thing, and I'll get into that a little bit later as well. But he ran through a little bit of information that really sort of spoke to me in that regard. And that was specifically, how do we manage this? It's difficult because we've not played in Europe in 25 years. We've only been in the top half in the Premier League once, which are kind of big. We look at ourselves as a very, very big, very historic club, but the issue is that size is in the past, and that size is history. And if we want to make that size now, we do still need to do the taking things step by step thing. He goes on to say that he wants the supporters to dream big, but we also need to make sure we're not forgetting those basics. Work to deliver on the pitch, stay humble, don't lose the basics. More of the same in terms of having a good, solid season, and from that point we can build. But he goes on to mention that dreaming too big in the dressing room will mean that you have no chance of that, because everyone's focused on a bigger goal rather than the smaller goal. And the smaller goal you need to get to, but if you're being distracted by the big thing and you're like, well, we need 3 points out of this match rather than just the 1 point, and you slip up and you drop points in stupid ways, that in itself will cause issues, and that is something that we could really do with not falling into, in my opinion, and in Daniel Farke's opinion, apparently. He said he wants to do it for this club. He's been here for over 3 years, fallen in love with the club, with the city. Difficult to achieve, but he'll work his socks off to make it happen, and that is fair enough. Also says that in terms of what a good season represents, because I think this is a very, very fair question, with everyone saying that they want us to be in Europe and all this kind of stuff. He says that basically it's a foundation year, because with the players that have left, looking at Karl Darlow specifically, looking at Pascal Struijk specifically, they were considered senior players. Pascal Struijk was 27, 28, that sort of age range, and was a player that was clearly key. He was one of the vice-captains, a significant part of the Elland Road squad, which meant that when he left, there was a lot of work to be done. He then goes on to sort of discuss Darlow being in the same thing, 36 years old, again, getting on a little bit, so you need to lay a foundation, which is where we have James Trafford. We need to lay a foundation in place of Pascal's... There we go. In place of Pascal Struijk, which is what we get with Muharemovic, who has just turned 23. James Trafford, just turned 23. But he goes on to say that you can't expect those players right now to exceed what those other players that have left did last season, because again, Trafford didn't play much last season. It's Muharemovic's first season in England. It's going to be very, very difficult, and it's going to take a little bit of time, it's going to take a little bit of patience, and he was right to emphasise that as much as feasibly possible, to go, we'll be secure, we'll be safe, and we'll be sound, and we'll be fine, and we'll be pushing forward, because that's what we need. And that's what we'll get, I believe, because that's what Daniel Farke wants to do. There's also a little bit about, does optimism make the job harder? So he saw the thing about us being the most optimistic squad, this is where he mentioned it, but he doesn't want to change it a single bit for the fans. We were pessimistic for a very, very long time. The optimism now shows that clearly things are going significantly better, so you're not going to complain about that at all. But you can't let that bubble burst, you can't let that momentum drop, because once the momentum drops, and he makes a sort of link to the stock market, once you see something falter, the bubble pops, and everything starts to collapse. Which isn't something that you really want. But he goes on to say that we did this a few years ago, we got promoted, we had a decent first season, and then it ended in disaster, ended in financial chaos, we had 4 managers in 6 months, we ended up in the Championship, then Daniel Farke came in, which was pretty damn solid. And that sort of continued eye on consistent improvement is something that I'm very, very glad that we're seeing from Daniel Farke right now, and will absolutely push us in the right direction. So I'm kind of happy to see it. I will get to the chat in a couple of minutes, by the way. I'm keeping an eye on things, but I want to make sure I cover everything off. So I've covered the optimism stuff, which is nice. Then there was a very, very, very quick chat on contract talks, because Daniel Farke, as we know, doesn't like talking about any business until it is business that is down on paper, which makes a lot of sense. And we also got a little bit sort of bamboozled, we got a little bit stumped by the fact that Jayden Bogle was also announced to have a new contract earlier today, which was very nice. Bogle contract to 2030, Rodon contract to 2030. In fact, I'll read this exactly as Daniel Farke did. Ampadu contract to 2030, Joe Rodon contract to 2030, Jayden Bogle contract to 2030, Daniel Farke contract comes later. There's no money left for the manager right now, which clearly was a little bit of a joke. It was sort of it doesn't matter right now, we're focusing on player recruitment, and he says that he'll discuss it a bit more when the window's closed. Beran then came up with another very good question, in my opinion, because it showed that Daniel Farke, we know, is a little bit of a draw to some of the players. People say that, like, Farke doesn't have any pull and all this bullshit. Clearly he does, otherwise players wouldn't come in the first place. But Beran's question was basically, if Daniel Farke's future is left hanging, will there be a disturbance to such a tight-knit club, with players like Elvedi coming specifically to play under Daniel Farke? Which is fair enough. Like, I understand that. That all makes a lot of sense. And then his response also made a lot of sense. I think he says he just wanted to speak in September about it, which is the next international break. Next international break is like 3 weeks long. It is insane. I hate it so much. But it crosses through September and October, and it's after 6 games, which means we should have a good idea of where the squad actually is, because it's not like an unrepresentative sample in the first 6 games. If I have a quick look at Leeds United fixtures, right? Let's have a look at who we're playing. In these first 6 games, we've got Forest, which is not the easiest of games. Currently run by Glasner, who we know is a very, very decent manager. Forest, again, doesn't really count. That's a League Cup match, so I'm going to take that one out of the equation. We'll ignore it for now. Brighton away, never easy. We don't tend to score down there. And another meet-up with Pascal Struijk, which should be an adventure. Newcastle at home. Newcastle are consistently in the process of sort of falling apart, which is hilarious, but it means that they can be a little bit of a threat. Then Palace at home. Palace, again, another very, very decent side that will be looking to continue their momentum. So after that international break, and I fully believe that this is where the 49ers and Daniel Farke have come to an agreement where it's like, we will have a conversation on what's going on here in the international break. We'll have a conversation about the contract then, because we'll know what the expectations are, we'll know what the squad looks like, we'll know all this kind of stuff, and everyone will have as much information as possible before making those negotiations, which I think is a clever thing to do, and is why Daniel Farke is saying, I want to wait till September to discuss it, because I think that has been bookmarked as the place that conversation happens. It goes on to mention how it'll be challenging to be the first manager in a long time at Leeds to have a solid second season, because again, Bielsa, after he came up, didn't look too great, ended up being replaced by Jesse Marsh. Jesse Marsh scraped through the first season, and the second season also didn't go too well in the slightest. And that's all of our time in the Premier League for the last 20 years or so. So clearly it's not going to be an easy thing to do, and he wants to do it himself if he is able to. He says he's not thinking about the contract at all, so when he speaks to players wanting to extend, they don't feel like that he's not going to just burn himself out for this club. He's going to do everything that he can for Leeds United in this time. They say that the manager's side before self. He is one of the most important at the club to basically live and breathe the club, because he's sort of the talisman at the minute, which is completely fair enough. He's an attracting factor for us at this point. When I leave one day, I want people to see the club in a better place than I came in. He's been one of the longest serving Leeds managers in the last 3 decades. His contract ends in 10 months. They've got more than enough time to make a decision. And he mentions that right now, transfers are his main concern. There'll be a little bit more time to talk about this, which is completely understandable. And that is the Daniel Farke part of the contract conversation done, because he draws a nice, neat line under that and goes, we've had that discussion, or specifically, we've not had that discussion because we don't need to have that discussion. It's fine. We'll draw a line under it. He then does have a little bit of a natter about other contracts that are coming up, which is in the next 12 months, Mecha, Aronson, Gruev, and he says that, as with all business, we only really announce it when it's signed, which adds up with what the 49ers have been doing in terms of releasing information throughout this transfer window, because, as we all know, we didn't know anything about a Rodon extension before it came. We didn't know anything about an Ampadu extension before it came. We didn't know anything about a Bogle extension before it came. So to get all of those done very, very quietly is very, very, very promising, because it also means that there is potentially stuff with the other players going on. But Mecha, Aronson and Gruev are a little bit complicated. But I'll finish his answer first before I get onto my own opinions on that one. We'll only announce everything once it's signed. We want to keep our key players. We can't announce everything within just 4 weeks. We've made big decisions in the past days, pointing to Ampadu, Rodon, Bogle. Perhaps things will happen in the coming days, but nothing he can announce yet. So I don't know whether that is a tease, or I don't know if that is genuine uncertainty on his part, which makes it sort of interesting to be tracking. But again, not wanting to talk business until it's certain, which is sort of interesting, because there's also been rumour around a potential Gruev exit, a potential Mecha exit. So curious. Very, very interesting on that one. Beyond that, there was a little bit of chat about transfers, and the transfer chat was kind of funny because someone very, very early on asked if there was any sort of strategy in terms of who we are looking for in terms of profile for a striker. So, specifically, it could be a very busy final 12 days. What are you expecting? Is it a striker? Is it a 10? He said he won't speak on positions and profiles, but he's very, very happy so far. As he mentioned before the break, he'll push until the last day to get the best possible squad, and we know that this is the case because last time around, until the last moment, he was in press conferences going, it'd be really good if we got this. We didn't get this, but you could tell from Daniel Farkeson that he was doing absolutely everything that he could to push the 49ers into doing it. Where was that answer? I need to highlight these. Ultimately, that best possible squad is what the city, fans, and the club all deserve, which again, I'm liking the fact that he's focusing on the fans here, but it could just be playing up a little bit. So far so good, but he'll push to the last second and everyone involved is doing the same. Later on down the line, he discusses in a little bit more detail because he said that he doesn't want to talk about positions, he doesn't want to talk about roles, which again, completely understandable. Some cheeky little bugger decides to ask another question on transfers, which I think is a little bit of a waste of a question from him. Because he asks, okay, you're not going to give us positions, you're not going to give us roles, but how many targets remain? To which he goes, well, I can't answer, because if we speak too much on not only profiles and positions, but the price goes up. If we say that we're looking for a right winger that plays at 10, as we did last summer, and then we go for Harry Wilson, Fulham will have seen that and gone, well, we can push the price up because they really, really, really want one of those. Which obviously means that we're in a little bit of a dodgy position because you either overpay or you don't get. And then he goes on to sort of mention he wants us to save money. Obviously, we've got limited resources, as all of the clubs do, so we're using them in a smart and sustainable way. If he says he wants 3 and we get 2, people will be mad, so just be quiet about it, which obviously, sort of good. It means things are sort of held tight, and it means that the fans aren't going to completely lose their minds, as we have a tendency to do sometimes. Let's be completely honest with ourselves here. But he's carefully optimistic that we do some more business, which is ultimately all good. That's all you can particularly ask for from Daniel Farker in this one. Then covers a couple of sort of wider bits of conversation, a couple of bits on various individual players, one bit on injuries. I'll get to the injuries at the end. Asked a little bit in terms of change of style. Again, he sort of goes, we'd like to take a little bit more control over games. That'd be quite good. We all kind of think that. He's very aligned with the 49ers. Set pieces are going to be important again. What else have I not covered? Noah Okafor, he's improving every single day in terms of his fitness. He played 2 pre-season games when he probably wouldn't have otherwise, but he's happy with that. He's let him do some extra running because we need him for 11 months, not the next, 3 games. He's not there 100%, but he can still influence games, so it looks like he's not going to be starting against Forest, but we already sort of knew that. Training well, ready to be picked, but it's ultimately Farker's responsibility to decide if he's suited better to when opponents are tired. He's liked what he's seen in training so far. About Tanaka, he said that he didn't go all arm around the shoulder with him after the World Cup because that probably wouldn't have been beneficial. He'd be in a position where he just felt a little bit pitied, which you don't always necessarily want to do. That's just going to make your player feel a little bit more sad, so that's okay. Where did we go? Harry Wilson, he said he's very intelligent, he's adapting quite well, also because he played in England last year. Very, very beneficial in that regard, means that he understands the league already. Longstaff, he said that Longstaff playing quite well in pre-season doesn't give him a headache, but it's a bit of joy. Good at the back of last season. There are several players that shone in that position, though, so it's going to be hard to make a decision. He's quite happy that Longstaff forced himself back into the fold in the mix to be picked. He's improved his standing in pre-season, which means that we can likely see Longstaff as potentially a little bit more of a rotation option throughout the season, rather than just being on the bench. Did I miss any specific bits? Yes. There was one question as well, where he was asked if there was a specific message that he wanted to give the fans. And the way that I've got it noted down was dream big, be excited, think about unrealistic targets, which is fair. Effectively, all of the don't be too optimistic stuff was stuff that Daniel Farker was saying about the dressing room. Was a case of, if we are too loud about this, we are going to push ourselves beyond where we can reasonably be right now, which is interesting. And that could potentially lead to a collapse going forwards. It's just a case of be sensible in the dressing room, but for fans, absolutely push yourself as hard as you can. Unrealistic targets, dream big. win things, wonderful. Enjoy the moment. It's been a good pre-season. We've got great signings through the door. Got a great team, great spirit, and a group that love playing for the shirt. We won't be perfect, but with the fans we can have another great season, which I think was a really, really nice message to ultimately give out. Then we get on to the bit about the players that are unavailable because of injuries. Very, very, very short list for the Forest match. Gabby's out. We knew Gabby would be out. Nonto is out. We knew Nonto would be out. And that's fine. But that was the presser. That was the basics of the presser. Contract stuff, no real news, but news to come is the general vibe that I got. Transfer stuff, no news, because obviously he's not going to give stuff away. Very, very positive and optimistic, though. I got a very, very good vibe. It felt like the ones where Daniel Farker knows he's onto something good, but he knows that if he says it out loud, then that will potentially create a rod for his own back. And the last thing that you want to do at the start of any season, regardless of a second season in the Premier League, is create that rod for your own back. Anyway, I'm going to have a quick look through the chat. But if you've got anything specific that you want me to discuss, please do so in the chat now, because I for some reason, cannot scroll in the chat right now. So if you could do me a favour, if you would help me with that one, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. Effortless French says, I agree with Farker, we haven't really improved the attack except for Wilson. Can see more draws with a better defence, so 16-17 finish. What? New striker doesn't change the lineup, DCL up front. Why would we have more draws and finish lower? I don't know. Oh, also, Daniel Farker did mention the massive improvement that's happened at Spurs. Mentioned a little bit about the progress at Nottingham Forest as well, and said that realistically, those teams are potentially overtaking us, so we'll need to overtake a different two teams if we want to retain the position that we were in. So it's going to be quite hard. Joe, we need you in the presses. Fun fact, I was in a post-match presser last season at one point, but I didn't get to ask a question, but that's fine, that happens. Sunderland have gone too soon, they'll probably struggle this season. Europe killed teams last year. I think Sunderland could be in the shit. One of their biggest signings that they've made so far was Thomas Meunier, which is not the best of signs, especially signing Thomas Meunier on a free as one of your marquees. That's a bit nuts. We need a left winger next. I think we're alright, to be honest. I think anything that we're adding now, and I know, like, a lot of the discussion has been hinged around, but where's the depth in X, Y, or Z position? The fact that we're looking at depth right now is good. Aston Villa's predicted lineup for the weekend is horrendous because they keep dropping players, and that includes basically everyone that was good for them. If all of the rumoured moves are completed from Aston Villa on the way out, they will be left with 5 players from the team that were in the Europa League final last year. That is a hellish position to be in. They're not going to enjoy that, and it could cause some real issues for them, and I think that we're in a fairly good spot having retained what we need. But, it's questionable sometimes. Forest, Spurs, Fulham, an unknown. Sunderland at risk but could be knocked out early, then they're fine. Remove Spurs and Forest and we'd be 17th. I don't know. I think we're probably looking alright. I think we're potentially going to climb. I think we're looking better than we were last season. And there'll be other sides that have slipped a little bit that we haven't quite noticed yet. Does Suzuki start for Villa? I imagine that's the reason they've got him in. You wouldn't sign Suzuki if you weren't planning on playing him. So the way I'm looking at that is Zion Suzuki will absolutely be playing. Martinez... Has Martinez already left? I don't know. But Martinez, if he hasn't left, will leave. Suzuki will start. But that's sort of to be expected. Like, you don't sign a goalkeeper that good and then don't play them. I think the 3 go back down. Yeah, honestly, I'm in a similar sort of position. I don't see the 3 that came up having done enough. Maybe Coventry, but at the same time, Frank Lampard has always struggled when he's run a team. Sorry, I've noticed a thing. Frank Lampard's always struggled when he's been running a team that's been a little bit sort of behind the curve in terms of talent, which makes things a bit tricky. Interesting that you say that, Effortless French. Because I've just seen a little bit of news. And there's a little bit of news that I'll be doing a video on in a moment. But in fact, I'll do a video on it now, actually, whilst I'm on stream. That could be quite good. But I've just seen this, which is that Leeds and Nottingham Forest are both apparently interested in signing Liam Delap, which is very, very, very curious. So, let's find out a little bit more about that. I'm very, very quickly going to do a video on this. I'm going to record it as I do it, because I think That's probably a good approach. I'm just going to need to work out how I do that. Right. Sorry, gang, but I'm going to have to get rid of the chat from this specific screen because I'm going to do this in full video format. So, you guys are going to get the inside of my entire video creation process, which is quite fun. So, I start by going test, words, test words to see how the voice is sounding. Very, very interesting. All good. And then we dive into it. 3, 2, 1. Leeds United have been linked with a hell of a lot of players all across the pitch in this transfer window. We've still got ongoing links with Rafa Leao, Bilal El Khanous, Igor Paixão, Frankie Lino, countless footballers. But sometimes a player pops up where you see them linked and you think, surely that can't necessarily be the case, because I'm not entirely sure if that's the sort of player that we need, and that is who Leeds United have been linked with right about now, because the club have been linked with a Premier League striker that I will be completely honest, I don't hugely like the work of in years past, and it could make things a little bit difficult. This is one of those where I look at it and I go, But then again, I did the same with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about who I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about why they're potentially looking for a move, what their potential ceiling is, and what this could mean not only for them, but the wider squad going forward. And the player in question, according to Alex Crook, who is reporting this as an exclusive, is Liam Delap. He states, on behalf of TalkSport, that Leeds United and Nottingham Forest are both interested in signing the £40 million rated Liam Delap. Everton are also keen. It's one to watch in the final days of the transfer window. In my opinion, this basically says that Liam Delap has been told that he can just leave. He will not be required at his current club, which makes a hell of a lot of sense. Like, at the end of the day, he didn't perform really in the slightest at Chelsea. He's lost the number 9 shirt. I believe that was to João Pedro. And that screams not only a lack of trust on the Chelsea side, Xabi Alonso clearly doesn't like him, doesn't think that he'll play at a decent standard, but beyond that, there's a little bit of chat surrounding, well, how much money can we get out of him? Now, that £40 million fee is one of the places where I'd stumble a little bit. Personally, in my opinion, Leeds United will not be willing to match their own transfer record within a couple of weeks of just having broken the transfer record, especially when the two players that are being discussed are so clearly separate from one another in terms of their perception and their level. James Trafford at the moment is seen as an incredibly promising footballer. 23 years old, so is Liam Delap, but we'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute's time. An incredibly promising footballer, an incredibly high ceiling on James Trafford, who is England's future number 1. And the only reason that he potentially wasn't at the World Cup last year was because, well, Jordan Pickford is seemingly immovable from that position, which makes a lot of sense, but also he didn't really get time at Manchester City, not because he was playing badly and got dropped, but because the player that he was dropped for was Gianluigi Donnarumma. And you don't properly compete against Donnarumma unless you are one of the best keepers in the world already. And as Daniel Farke said at his press conference earlier on, James Trafford didn't play much last season. We shouldn't really expect the world from him this season because it's going to take a little bit of time to adapt, a little bit of time to get up to pace. Sure, he's a very, very good goalkeeper, but if he makes mistakes, he makes mistakes. That's fine. On the other hand, we need to assess the way that Liam Delap has been discussed, where Liam Delap had a very, very good season for, was it Ipswich? I think it was Ipswich, where he scored plenty of goals in the Premier League. Fine. In a side that got very firmly relegated, which is saying that he was basically getting all of the chances that Ipswich got. And then, in the years since, he's not really looked fantastic, which isn't really what you want to see. If I have a specific look at his numbers over the past few seasons, for example, at Ipswich, 24-25, played 37 games, 2,600 minutes, 12 goals. Great stuff. A couple of assists. He's not the most creative of players, which is another thing that I'll mention in a moment's time when it comes to roles and stuff like that. But then last season, didn't even nearly keep up the rate of goal scoring. 28 appearances, which is significantly fewer minutes. To be fair, 2,600 down to 1,100 minutes. Big decrease. But I imagine a part of that decrease is because he scored 1 goal, which isn't good. That's 1 goal in the Premier League. In fact, I will see if he scored goals in other competitions, but there we go. In all competitions, he managed 2 goals, which is not the most fantastic of records, let's be completely honest here. His other goal was against Barcelona in the Champions League, which is a little bit of a weird place to score your second goal of the season. And then he got 3 assists against Hull City, which not screaming top performance, which is sort of fine. But that's why, personally, I think he's probably not worth the same value as a James Trafford. I imagine if Leeds United are going to make this move, it's going to be in the category of, well, we'll want him on a loan, but we'll need sort of guarantees. And that makes me look at Newcastle wanting an interest and Everton wanting an interest and going, okay, if you guys want this, you guys can 100% have this. Because I'm not 100% certain what Liam Delap's level is. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. But I also think this will have a potentially negative effect in terms of the role that he plays and the potential position in the squad that he will take. Because earlier this morning I put out a video discussing the potential rumour of Lucas Mecha going to Wrexham. Lucas Mecha, very, very clearly a decent centre-forward for Leeds United. The way I was looking at it, however, was the fact that Wrexham are potentially going to be looking at something like an £8 to £10 million move. If we can manage to sort of stress and strain that move and push that value higher to something like 12 or 15, that would be fantastic for a free signing with 1 year left on his contract. This would effectively guarantee that not only would Mecha be on the way out, but this would use all of the squad cost ratio headroom that we would have spent on Lucas Mecha on that single player. And I will be honest, in terms of the profile and the way that he plays, I don't reckon Liam Delap is what we need right now. What we tend to need is someone that is able to create those chances, and either that or be incredibly clinical. Because we were comfortably below our XG last season. That was also mentioned by Daniel Farker in his press conference. We were underperforming in XG for and against. We've improved the against with Muharemovic added, with Trafford added. It's the for that needs a little bit of a tweak now. It's the improve the XG4 by, ideally, creating more chances for the likes of Calvert-Lewin, but also putting away the chances that we do have. And I don't think Liam Delap is enough of a creator to realistically do that. And I think you come with the baggage of he would need to find a hell of a lot of form at Leeds United. And you've got the additional baggage of, to get him on the pitch, you need to take off Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We know that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a very, 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 very good player at Leeds United, and he's integral to that side. He's part of the leadership group. So I think, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, I've seen that one tweet and I'm building the rest of it from contextual knowledge, but in my personal opinion, Liam Delap isn't the one. Liam Delap isn't the one at all. I think we'd be paying a vast English tax of along the lines of £20 million more than what his actual value is. We could find a better player on the continent for less money with a higher ceiling. And all of this comes together to say that, and this is a different section from a completely personal perspective, I don't want to be like bankrolling Chelsea. To be completely honest with you, Chelsea throw money into a pit and somehow profit from their sales, and I do not understand how they do that. And that would also be the case with Liam Delap, where we would be overpaying, I think. Instead, pay attention to someone like a Nicolo Trasoldi, who is clearly a ridiculously good finisher. Pay attention to Franquilino, who can create opportunities. We know that we have a very, very good scouting network. Please use it, as opposed to, here's a cast-off from the top 6, would you like them? Because all of our business so far has been very good. Elvedi, fantastic signing. Muharemovic, young, talented, brilliant stuff. Has been performing in recent seasons. Trafford has been performing in recent seasons. I think it would break our current mould to sign Liam Delap, who hasn't been. It would apply a hell of a lot of pressure to us, and ultimately cause more damage than it would be a benefit. Which is a shame, because I'm sure Liam Delap is a nice guy, but he's not going to be the nice guy for Leeds United, which is fine by me. Like, his contract has a huge amount on it. It's not going to be worth our while. But, as always, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That'd be massively appreciated. Also, subscribe if you haven't yet. That'd be absolutely wonderful. The button's right down there. Massively appreciated. Even become a channel member. You get videos and stuff early. Not this one, because, as you can see on this screen... No, this screen... No. Where the hell did I put it? This screen... No. Okay, I've completely deleted my chat box, which was a bad idea. But I'm currently live streaming as I record this one, so that makes things a little bit funky, so I'm just going to straight release this one. Anyway, going to leave that there. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo. And that's the recording done. I will get that uploaded now, but I am going to leave the stream there. I was going to end the stream the moment before I saw that news, and then I saw that news and I was like, shit, I should probably get something out on that. So here we are. In fact, I might... you know, I will do the thumbnail on stream as well. Just because I quite like doing things on stream, because it shows my creative process. There we go, that's the one. How do you double record? I, in this specific instance, wasn't recording the stream, but I was streaming, so I just had to press the record button, and then that turned it from just streaming into streaming and getting an 8-minute recording out of the stream. So if I move you to there... Thank you very much, Mr. Liam Delap. Why are you always in a dark blue shirt? That is inconvenient for me. Background remove. Liam Delap linked with £40 million move to Leeds. There we go. Accept the cookies. Why is it saying cookies? I don't know. I thought I got rid of those ages ago. There we go. Liam Delap is here. Pop it there. Call it Delap. Share. Download. This page. Download. Cool. Right, that's the thumbnail done. That video will be up in a matter of minutes. I know you've basically just watched it, but if you want to watch it again, that'll be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Anyway, I'm going to leave that stream there. Hope you all enjoyed. I genuinely have to go before I upload this video. So I will see you all later. Toodaloo, friendos. Stressful.